The fifth edition of the Africa Energy Week is still ongoing, and this is happening in Cape Town, South Africa, where more than 7,000 delegates from over 100 countries have converged on Cape Town for this summit. We have News Central's Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun, who's standing by with the latest. She tries to give us more updates earlier on, but I'd like to ask the question again. Tolu, if you can hear me, let's start with the opening ceremony. What would you say stood out the most from the conversations that were had at the opening ceremony?
I think Blessings, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I think it was the fact that even the performance had a similarity, the messaging has been coming from the Africa Energy Week for the past several years now. And that message is that Africa will drill and Africa will do what is necessary to meet its energy needs. And that means that even if the world is moving towards a green and just energy transition, it will be difficult for you to ask countries like Nigeria, Angola, Libya, Egypt, which are all represented here and much more, to keep their rich resources while the rest of the world moves towards a just transition, while we have those resources and we're not supposed to touch them. So I think for me, the opening, sharing that thread of the conversation in terms of the fact that Africa is ready to drill, and Africa is ready to drill whether the world wants Africa to drill or not, is one of the things that stood out to me at the beginning of this. That performance really set the tone for what the chairman, the executive chairman of the African Energy Chamber said, and as well as set the tone for a number of the panels that we've observed today already.
All right, Tulu, it's quite ironic because this is very similar to the Onga summit. One of the things that stood out the most is the fact that the Nigerian vice president and his delegates and the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, were asking for one thing, which was a seat at the table. But beyond that, the vice president of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, was also saying the same thing that, they're spotlighting there in Cape Town about us being able to utilize our own resources and not having to import it. But beyond that, you also captured the protesters outside the venue. What were they asking for? I know it's something similar to the resources in Africa. How much does this reflect the mood around the summit?
It's really quite interesting because the protesters were out earlier this morning, sitting outside of the venue for the summit this year, and they were basically reeling off the list climate polluters and how much, or rather how many climate change related disasters have happened in the world in about the past 5 to 7 or 10 years. And when they titled up the bill, what they got was over $5 trillion worth of disasters has been what has happened in the past 10 years. That's correct. In the past 10 years that we've been following the climate change issues. Now, what they're basically saying is, yes, while Africa wants to drill, it needs to be done well, but they're also demanding that the West in particular pay for the damages. It's data that has shown us that, unfortunately for the African continent, while we are polluting under about 3% of the greenhouse gases, what we are finding is that we are feeling the oversized effects of climate change. You can talk about the number of typhoons and climate disasters that have happened on the continent in the past 5 years, the infrastructure that has been affected, the thousands, if not millions of lives that have been affected and also lost because of climate changes. So they tallied up a bill of about $5 trillion as to what climate polluters owe due to the climate change incidences that have happened in the past 10 years. So they're not saying necessarily that Africa shouldn't drill. Africa should not also, of course, look for ways to finance its resource-rich environments, but they're saying that those who've already done this, who've already led us to where we are now, need to take responsibility, need to pay, I guess we'd say, a form of reparations for what they've done, and of course need to be held accountable for how things have gone so far.
Tolulope Adeleru-Balogun bringing us the update from Cape Town, South Africa on the 5th edition of the Africa Energy Week, and definitely we'll have more updates from that subsequently.